is Mélanie Le Berre. I'm a PhD candidate in rehabilitation science at the Université de Montréal and here at the Research Center of the Institut de Gériatrie de Montréal. I'm very glad to speak today with Professeur Ana Ines Ansaldo, Professeur Sylvie Belleville, and Dr. Rémi Quirion about dementia research. My first question to them was about their research interest and how they initially became interested in dementia and Alzheimer research.
My interests in dementia are double-folded. I'm interested in the mechanisms that sustain communication during aging. Communication is a very important ability that is a key to the quality of life of older persons. So I'm interested in how the brain sustains optimal communication. But I'm also interested in communication challenges that occur during aging in the context, for example, of neurodegenerative disease, such as dementia. So what I do is that I study the brain, but I also develop interventions to support communication in older levels. For example, in persons that live with the consequences of stroke, or in persons that develop dementia of Alzheimer's type, Parkinson's disease, or others, not only for the persons themselves, but also for the caregivers who live with them or caregivers that take care of them in institutions like in long-term care.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to talk to you. An important part of my work is to try to understand the prodrome of Alzheimer's disease. So can we identify tests or procedures that could help us predict who is going to progress to dementia among people with a mild cognitive impairment or people with a subjective complaint. I'm also very interested in this particular phase as an expression of neuroplasticity. And I'm very interested also in the reason why there's so much inter-individual differences or variability in how people age at the cognitive level. So why is there that some people seem to develop a form of reserve that make them more resistant to brain aging or to dementia? And why am I interested in this? Well, it essentially comes from my clinical practice. You know, after my PhD, I was hired as a neuropsychologist at the Gériatric Institute, and I evaluated many older adults, and that's where I realized that first that there was this fuzzy phase where people felt that there was something wrong, but it was difficult to catch their deficit with typical tests. And I also realized that we had not much to offer to these people. They had a diagnosis or they were worried, but we didn't really were able to provide them with tools. And because I did a PhD on neuroplasticity, so I thought that was probably a nice way to perhaps try to better understand the neuroplasticity that could take place during the early phase of Alzheimer's disease.
For me, it's the brain. The brain is a fabulous organ, a lot of still inquiries with a lot of things that we don't know. And when I came back from my postdoc from the State, it was based at the Douglas Hospital, a mental health hospital in Montreal, affiliated with McGill. And we had quite a few Alzheimer patients on the hospital grounds. I became interested more and more about dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and that's why I started to do research in the field.
They all had interesting projects currently in progress or recently completed. I asked them to give us a few details on that topic.
COMPASS is an acronym for the French expression communication proche aidant, which means communication and the caregivers, but also for the compass, because the compass is the instrument that guides us in the storm. And dementia is a huge storm in the life of people. It becomes very difficult to communicate with a person with dementia. There's communication breakdowns that are very frequent and that increase in time. So what I reflected on is what is something that remains better preserved despite the different stages of the illness, despite the progress of the illness. And this is emotional communication. Emotional communication is a concept that refers to the fact that when we communicate, we not only transmit thoughts by means of words, but we can also transmit affect, emotions, and the evidence shows that people with dementia, even in the late stages of dementia, can recognize positive emotions. So Compass was built around this idea of putting together some audiovisual material that reflects the interests and the life trajectory of a person living with dementia, so that this material can be handy and can be used by means of the app Compass on an iPad to create communication situations between the caregiver and the person with dementia that will trigger positive emotions.
Yeah, I'm involved in many research and mobilization and knowledge mobilization project where technology is really central, and the role is to provide people with ways to improve their brain health or maintain their brain health. The Lucy application is interesting. It focuses on nutrition, physical activity, and cognitive engagement, and the role there is to connect older adults with actual coach or real coaches who provide them with personalized advices, guidelines, information, and they're inspired by the behavioral change theories. So they help people to change their behavior to adopt healthy lifestyle. And we have another project. The Brain is Brain Health Pro. It's been developed with the Canadian Consortium on Neurodegeneration in Aging. And here, older adults have access to an educational platform, so there's no real coach, but they receive lots of information on dementia, of course, but also on diet, physical activity, cognitive engagement, but also other protective factors like sleep, social isolation or social participation, vascular risk factors, vision and hearing. And so you see, both programs are interesting because they do provide information based on older adults' priorities, personal goals, and lifestyle risk profile, but they are complementary. They're not exactly the same, but they do focus on improving brain health by engaging different modifiable risk factors.
In my team, my lab, we work on trying to connect the 3 or 4 main hypotheses of Alzheimer's disease. Beta amyloid, tau, loss of cholinergic neurons. So we wanted to, instead of having kind of belief, or I will even say church, saying I'm from the amyloid church, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Taoist, we tried to connect these 3. And that's probably where we had the major impact, trying to understand how these 3 or 4 major markers of Alzheimer's disease brain are connected and how they play on the development of the disease.
Reflecting on their professional path, I now asked if they could think of the main element that contributed to expand their career internationally.
Oh, that's a very big question. There are many things. There's not just one thing that contributes to developing a career, a research career. I think that the choice of your supervisor is the first one. When you choose your research supervisor, I always tell my students or people who ask me these kind of questions, you have to go shopping for your research supervisor, and you have to meet several people and see that the person is knowledgeable but has also other qualities that go well with your own personality. That was the first. Then is having confidence in oneself and not getting down when things do not work as you wish the first time, the second time, and the third time. And also being open to the diversity of research fields, because it is very important that one becomes an expert in his or her own field, but you have to be open to other research fields because reality is complex. Research on aging is complex. Recent research on dementia is very complex. So this being open-minded and looking for different avenues that you can explore has also brought me to meet very interesting people all over the world with whom I contribute. So,
Oh, that's a good question. Of course, I think you need to do solid science. You have to be innovative. You have to publish in very good journals and solid science. I think also, I think what is very important is you need to be recognized for your particular contribution. So you need to have your own color, your own particular landmark. You need to be Mr. something, Mr. Physical Activity or Mrs. Cognitive Training. I think that's important to identify yourself to a particular expertise. I also think one other aspect which I think is very important is networking. Networking is important you can start in a very simple way, for instance, having colleagues of your generation, so making links with them, meeting them at international conferences. Don't be afraid to go to posters and ask questions and show your interests and curiosities. Researchers love to talk about their research and talk about science. So you need to show your openness also to their particular interests. I think that's very important to do this international networking that is so critical and nice about science as well.
I think scientific paper on linking these various phenotypes of the Alzheimer brain. This paper attracted the students and postdocs from all over the world, and also presentation at international meetings. So the connections are very important in science. So having connection with colleagues all over the world, extremely helpful. You learn from each other, and then you can tackle problem with a bit of a different angle and come up with new data.
According to them now, what are the main avenues of research on dementia that should be pursued in Montreal in the coming years?
well, there are several avenues. They go from the basic mechanisms that trigger dementia. This is at the biological level. Also research on the ways to let's say, approach the symptoms of dementia. For the time, we do not have many, let's say, drugs or pills or medication that can be used efficiently, but this should be pursued. And of course, I think that research on the quality of life persons with dementia and the caregivers is a must, because before we get to preventing the illness and curing the illness, there's lots of people living with the illness, and we need to do something about that. And one thing that I think is very important also is demystifying dementia, because the word dementia has not, in the history of humanity, has always had a very bad aura.
Well, given my interest and area of expertise, you won't surprise to hear that I think prevention is very important, neuroplasticity, better understanding reserve, but also early detection. I think these are key areas for dementia. Many research, when you think about neurodegenerative diseases, people are often interested in looking at the negative drivers. So what is the cause of these diseases? It's very important. I think an interesting area is looking at the positive drivers of brain health. So brain health, in addition to brain disease, so what makes a healthy brain as we get older. I think that's a very interesting and also optimistic way of addressing aging and dementia in the brain. So and we are very, very well positioned here in Montreal because there's such a strong expertise in neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience, neuropsychology, of course, and also artificial intelligence and digital health. These are all very important tools to reach these objectives.
I think in terms of future research in the field of Alzheimer, of course, we don't have a cure. We don't have very effective treatment yet after a decade of research all over the world. But if I had to start tomorrow, I'd be more on the side of prevention. What can prevent us from developing the disease? What type of strategy can we develop to lower the incidence of dementia of the Alzheimer type? So really on the prevention side will be where I would focus.
And last but not least, all of them had final words of encouragement for the students who are listening.
First of all, thank you for being there, because we are working today, but you are going to pursue the work tomorrow. You are going to be the researchers of tomorrow. So it is so important that academic research keeps on going despite the difficulties, despite all the fake news and everything that we hear everywhere. It is so important that you're there, guys. So thank you for being there, and perseverate. You have to have a lot of perseverance, and you will see this is one of the best jobs that you can have, in the sense that you're always discovering new stuff. You're meeting very interesting people, and you're also enjoying of what other people created before you and pushing it forward.
I think you have chosen a very important area of research, and I'm grateful for that. I think we need to better understand dementia and also how to reduce its impact on the brain and promote brain health. I encourage you to aim for solid science, but also not to be afraid to sometimes take risks and step out of your comfort zone, innovate. For instance, a few years ago, I started a research program in virtual reality. It was something that was, nobody would go there. It was, but I think that really brought something unique in my laboratory and also in my perspective to brain health. So if you ensure you have a nice balance between solid science and innovation, I'm sure you'll have a great career and you will contribute wonderfully to important discoveries.
I'd say have fun. The main thing is to have fun when you do research, you do science, and be bold. Try to develop your own niche. Do not just follow what you read in the literature. Have maybe even a bit of a crazy idea that may bring you at a very, very different place in the field and make you recognized as a very innovative leaders.